When the avoidant withdraws, ends the relationship, or creates distance, the immediate instinct is to pursue them, convince them to stay, or demonstrate how much you care in hopes they will reconsider. Most advice focuses on strategies to make them miss you, tactics to trigger their fear of loss, or games designed to reverse the dynamic and make them chase. These approaches sometimes work temporarily, but they rarely lead to genuine reconciliation, based on authentic desire rather than manipulation. There is one approach that consistently brings avoidance back, not through manipulation, but through creating genuine shift in how they perceive you and the relationship. This approach is so powerful that avoidants who were completely convinced they needed to leave find themselves reconsidering. Avoidants who felt suffocated by the relationship begin to see it differently. Avoidants who believed they were better off alone start to question that belief. The approach does not involve games or manipulation, but it does require complete transformation in how you show up. The approach is this: completely accept their decision with genuine grace. Immediately begin living your best life with visible joy and growth. Establish yourself as a high-value person who is clearly thriving without them. Maintain friendly but boundary distance if there is contact, and demonstrate through your energy and actions that you have moved on to better things while remaining the kind of person they would want but can no longer easily access. This combination creates specific conditions in the avoidant's mind that trigger reconsideration in ways pursuit never could. Understanding why this approach brings avoidance back requires understanding what actually motivates avoidants to reconsider their decisions, why pursuit and neediness repel them while thriving attracts them, how their fear of loss is triggered by your genuine moving on rather than by strategic games, and why the avoidant crawls back to someone who no longer appears to need them but has become even more desirable. Complete acceptance with grace disrupts their entire narrative. The first reason this approach brings the avoidant back is that your complete acceptance of their decision with genuine grace completely disrupts the narrative they constructed to justify leaving. The avoidant typically builds story about why the relationship had to end. You were too needy. The relationship was suffocating. You wanted too much from them. They need their freedom and independence. This narrative helps them feel justified in their choice and protects them from guilt. But when you accept their decision with grace, rather than fighting it, their narrative falls apart. If you were desperately needy, you would be pursuing them right now. If the relationship was truly suffocating to them, you would be trying to pull them back in. If you wanted too much from them, you would be expressing that through attempts to maintain contact. But instead you are calm, accepting, even seeming relieved. This response does not fit the story they told themselves. The acceptance with grace also removes the drama and conflict that the avoidant may have been using to justify their withdrawal. Some avoidants create or escalate conflict as a way to make leaving feel necessary. They devalue you or pick fights or behave in ways that generate reaction. Your reaction to their behavior then becomes their justification. But when you accept their decision gracefully without drama, they lose this justification. The avoidant expected you to beg, plead, or at least try to convince them to stay. They were prepared for that response, and it would have confirmed their decision. But your acceptance creates cognitive dissonance. They question why you are not fighting for them. They wonder if maybe you wanted to leave too. They begin to reconsider whether they were right about the relationship being wrong. The disruption of their narrative creates space for doubt about their decision. This graceful acceptance also demonstrates maturity and strength that the avoidant did not expect from you. They may have underestimated you or assumed you would fall apart without them. Your composed acceptance proves them wrong and increases their respect for you. This increased respect makes you more attractive and makes them question whether they made a mistake in leaving someone who has this kind of strength. The key is that the acceptance must be genuine rather than strategic. If you are performing acceptance while secretly hoping they come back, the avoidant will sense the inauthenticity. True acceptance means you genuinely release them and accept that the relationship is over. This genuine release is what creates the power. The avoidant can feel the difference between someone playing hard to get and someone who has actually let go. Thriving visibly triggers their fear of irreversible loss. The second reason this approach brings the avoidant back is that your visible thriving triggers the avoidant's fear that they have made irreversible mistake and that they are losing you permanently to better life. When you pursue the avoidant, you prove you are stuck in the loss and need them. This makes the avoidant feel secure that they can always come back if they change their mind. But when you thrive, you prove you are moving forward without them in ways that may become permanent. The avoidant sees through social media or mutual friends that you are not just surviving, but actually flourishing. You look happier than you did when you were together. You are doing interesting things, pursuing goals, having new experiences. You appear lighter, freer, more energized. This visible thriving creates panic in the avoidant because it suggests you might actually be better off without them and that losing them was not the tragedy they assumed it would be for you. The thriving also makes you more attractive. The avoidant is drawn to people who are happy, fulfilled, and living full lives. When you were in the relationship, you may have been anxious, focused on them, sacrificing your own interests to accommodate their needs. But now you are vibrant and engaged with your own life. This version of you is more appealing than the version they left. They recognize they are losing access to upgraded version of the person they thought they knew. The visible thriving triggers the avoidant's competitive instinct and ego. They assumed they were the prize and that losing them would devastate you, but your thriving suggests maybe you were the prize and they were lucky to have you. This reversal of perceived value in the relationship makes them question their decision. They wonder if they gave up something more valuable than they recognized. The avoidant also begins to imagine you moving on with someone else, who will have access to this thriving version of you. The thought of another person getting the best version of you while they walked away from you becomes intolerable. They recognize that if you meet someone new while in this flourishing state, they may lose their chance to reconnect with you permanently. This creates urgency to reach out before it is too late. The thriving must be genuine rather than performed for the avoidance benefit. You are not posting on social media to make them jealous. You are actually living better life and naturally sharing that life. You are not pretending to be happy to trigger their fear. You are genuinely happy because you have invested in yourself and your well-being. The authenticity of your thriving is what makes it compelling to the avoidant. Establishing high value makes you desirable again. The third reason this approach brings the avoidant back is that establishing yourself as high-value person makes you desirable to the avoidant in ways you were not when you were pursuing them or accommodating their patterns. Value in relationships is largely determined by perceived options, self-respect, and the quality of life someone is living. When you pursue the avoidant, your value appears low because you seem to have no better options. When you thrive, your value appears high because you clearly have good life with or without them. The high value is established through multiple signals. You are not sitting around, waiting for the avoidant to decide about you. You have moved forward with your life and filled it with meaningful activities, connections, and goals. You have high standards and clear boundaries about how you will be treated. You carry yourself with confidence and self-respect. You appear to be someone who has choices and is choosing the best option for themselves. This high-value presentation makes the avoidant reconsider their assumption that they could always come back to you if they wanted. They recognize that someone who is living this well and has this much self-respect is not going to accept breadcrumbs or poor treatment. If they want you back, they will have to actually show up properly and meet your standards. This requirement makes you more valuable because you are not easily accessible. The high value also triggers the avoidant's desire for what they cannot easily have. Avoidants are often attracted to people who are somewhat unavailable or challenging to win over. When you were pursuing them, you were too available, and it triggered their avoidance. But now that you are clearly fine without them and have high standards, you become the challenge they want to pursue. The dynamic reverses, and they become the pursuer. The avoidant also recognizes that other people will see your value and may pursue you. They imagine potential competitors who would appreciate what the avoidant took for granted. This competition anxiety makes them want to reclaim you before someone else recognizes your worth and commits to you. They do not want to lose you to someone who will treat you better than they did. Establishing high value requires actually building that value rather than just projecting it. You develop your career or passions. You strengthen your friendships and social connections. You work on your physical health and appearance. You pursue goals that are meaningful to you. You become someone who is genuinely high value rather than someone pretending to be. The avoidant can sense the difference and only responds to genuine high value. Friendly but boundaried distance creates intrigue and safety. The fourth reason this approach brings the avoidant back is that maintaining friendly but clearly boundaried distance creates the perfect combination of intrigue and safety that allows the avoidant to reconsider without feeling pressured. If you cut off all contact completely, the avoidant may accept that the relationship is over and move on. But if you pursue or remain emotionally available, they feel pressured and withdraw further. Friendly distance is the middle ground that works. The friendly aspect means you are not angry or bitter when you do have contact. You are pleasant, cordial, perhaps even warm, but clearly not available for the kind of deep emotional connection you had before. This friendliness signals that you have processed your feelings and are not holding grudges. It makes the avoidant feel safe to be in contact with you without fearing emotional intensity or demands. But the boundaried aspect means you are not available for the relationship dynamic you had before. You do not engage in long emotional conversations. You do not make yourself available to meet their needs. You do not fall back into patterns of accommodating their withdrawal or pursuing their attention. The boundaries are clear. You are friendly, but you are not available for anything more unless they demonstrate genuine change and commitment. This combination creates intrigue because the avoidant can see that you are different, but they cannot quite figure out what changed or whether you would consider reconnecting. They wonder if you have moved on completely or if there is possibility. They are curious about whether you would give them another chance or whether that door is closed. This uncertainty is compelling to the avoidant and makes them want to explore the possibility. The friendly distance also allows the avoidant to observe your thriving and high value without feeling like you are performing for them. They see through incidental contact or social media that you are doing well. They notice the changes in you. They recognize that you have become even more appealing. But because you are not directing any of this at them, it feels more authentic and therefore more attractive. The boundary distance removes the avoidant's control over the dynamic. They cannot make you pursue by withdrawing because you are not pursuing. They cannot breadcrumb you to keep you available because your boundaries prevent that. They cannot have the benefits of connection with you without actually investing, because your boundaries require investment for access. This loss of control makes them reconsider what they gave up. The key is maintaining the boundaries consistently without being cold or punishing. You are not using the boundaries to hurt them or make them feel bad. You are protecting yourself and your well-being by requiring certain standards for your time and energy. This self-protective motivation makes the boundaries strong and consistent in ways that punishment-motivated boundaries would not be. Demonstrating you have moved on creates urgency to reconnect. The fifth reason this approach brings the avoidant back is that demonstrating genuine movement forward creates urgency in the avoidant to reach out before the opportunity to reconnect is lost forever. As long as you are stuck in the loss and clearly still attached to the avoidant, they feel no urgency. They know you will be there if they change their mind. But when you demonstrate real forward movement, they recognize the window for reconnection is closing. The movement forward is demonstrated through multiple signals. You are dating other people, or at least open to new connections. You are making plans and commitments for your future that do not include the avoidant. You are emotionally investing in your own life rather than remaining fixated on the past relationship. You talk about the relationship in past tense as something you learned from rather than as something you hope to resurrect. These signals tell the avoidant that you are not waiting for them and that if they want any possibility of reconnection, they need to act soon. The sense that you might find someone else, build new life, or simply become so invested in your forward movement that returning to them becomes unappealing, creates panic that motivates them to reach out before it is truly too late. The avoidant also recognizes that the longer they wait, the more you will heal, and the less likely you will be to give them another chance. Right now, there might be possibility if they reached out with genuine effort. But if they wait months or years, you may be completely over them and unwilling to go backwards to someone who hurt you. This recognition creates pressure to act while the window remains open. The demonstration of moving on must be authentic rather than strategic. Show designed to make them jealous. You are actually opening yourself to new possibilities. Because you have accepted that the relationship with the avoidant is over. You are genuinely building new life because waiting indefinitely for someone who chose to leave is not aligned with your self-respect. The authenticity of your forward movement is what creates the urgency in the avoidant. Some avoidants respond to this urgency by reaching out to test whether you are truly moving on or whether you would still be available to them. They may make contact to see if you still care or if you have actually released your attachment to them. Your response to these tests is critical. If you fall back into old patterns of being available, despite your boundaries, they learn you are not truly moving on and the urgency dissipates. But if you maintain your boundaries and demonstrate that access requires real investment, the urgency intensifies. Why this approach works where pursuit fails. This approach works to bring the avoidant back, where pursuit and neediness fail because it addresses the fundamental psychology of avoidant attachment. Avoidants are repelled by neediness and pursuit because these things trigger their fear of engulfment and suffocation. When you pursue, you confirm their narrative that you are too dependent and that they need to maintain distance to preserve their autonomy. But when you thrive and maintain boundaries, you trigger a completely different set of fears and desires. The thriving triggers the avoidance fear of loss in ways that pursuit never could. Pursuit makes them feel safe that you will always be available. Thriving makes them panic that they are losing you permanently to better life. Pursuit confirms they made right decision to create distance. Thriving makes them question whether they made terrible mistake. The fears triggered by your thriving are far more powerful motivators for reconnection than the fears triggered by your pursuit. The approach also makes you attractive in ways that align with what avoidants actually want in partners. Avoidants are drawn to independent people who have their own lives, who do not need them desperately, who can be strong and self-sufficient. When you are in the relationship needing reassurance and pursuing their attention, you are unattractive to their avoidant system. But now that you are independent, thriving, and clearly fine without them, you are attractive in exactly the ways that appeal to avoidance. The approach removes the pressure that makes avoidance withdraw. When you pursue, you create pressure for them to respond, to explain themselves, to meet your needs. This pressure triggers their flight response. But when you accept their decision and move forward, there is no pressure. You are not demanding anything from them. This absence of pressure creates space for them to feel their own feelings about losing you without the defensive reaction that pressure creates. The approach also demonstrates the growth and change that would be necessary for different outcome if you did reconnect. The avoidant can see that you are no longer the anxious pursuer who accommodated their patterns. You have become stronger, more boundaried, more independent. This visible change suggests that if you did get back together, the dynamic would be different. The avoidant can imagine relationship with this new version of you that would not trigger their suffocation fears the same way. Most importantly, the approach forces the avoidant to do the pursuing if they want reconnection. This role reversal is critical because it requires the avoidant to be the one taking vulnerability, making effort, demonstrating interest. They cannot rely on your pursuit to maintain connection. they must overcome their own fear and pride to reach out. This requirement filters for avoidants who have done some work on their patterns and screens out those who remain completely defended. What crawling back actually looks like from the avoidant. When an avoidant comes back in response to this approach, the crawling back may not look like obvious, desperate pursuit, but it will look different from their previous behavior. The avoidant who was completely silent may start liking your social media posts or making subtle contact. The avoidant who was emotionally distant may start sharing more or being more vulnerable. The avoidant who seemed to have moved on may suddenly be very present and available. The crawling back often starts small and indirect. The avoidant may reach out with practical question or casual message that has legitimate surface reason but is actually excuse to make contact. They may comment on something you posted or respond to something you shared. They may ask mutual friends about you or position themselves to run into you. These small moves are the avoidant testing whether the door is still open and whether you would be receptive to reconnection. If you respond to these initial moves while maintaining your boundaries and not falling back into old patterns, the avoidant will typically escalate their efforts. They may express that they miss you or that they have been thinking about the relationship. They may ask to meet in person to talk. They may begin to express regret about how things ended or acknowledgement that they made mistakes. The crawling intensifies as they try to overcome your boundaries and win you back. The avoidance crawling back may also include actual visible effort and change. They may be in therapy, working on their patterns. They may demonstrate through their actions that they can show up more consistently and with better emotional availability. They may make commitments and actually follow through on them. They may be willing to have the difficult conversations about what went wrong and what would need to be different. The key difference between the avoidant crawling back in response to this approach versus other circumstances is that they are coming back because they genuinely want to, rather than because they are lonely or have no better options. They are pursuing you because you have become more valuable and desirable, not because you are a safe fallback option. They are willing to do the work because they recognize what they lost and want to earn it back. However, it is critical to maintain your standards and boundaries, even when the avoidant crawls back. The fact that they returned does not mean they have fundamentally changed, or that the relationship will be different this time. You must require concrete evidence of change sustained over time, rather than accepting their return based on words and initial effort. The approach brings them back, but whether they can stay and create healthy relationship depends on whether they have truly worked on their patterns. Why you must actually live this approach rather than perform it. The most important truth about this approach is that you must actually live it rather than perform it strategically. The avoidant can sense the difference between someone who is genuinely thriving and living their best life versus someone who is performing these things to manipulate them into coming back. If you are faking your acceptance, pretending to be happy, strategically posting on social media to make them jealous, the approach will fail because the inauthenticity will be apparent. Genuine acceptance means you actually release attachment to the outcome with the avoidant. You accept that the relationship is over and you are moving forward with your life. You are not secretly hoping they come back while performing acceptance. You have truly let go and are building new future. This genuine release is what creates the power, because the avoidant can feel that you are no longer energetically attached to them. Genuine thriving means you are actually investing in yourself and your life and experiencing real joy and growth. You are not pretending to be happy while secretly miserable. You are not posting photos of fun activities while crying at night. You have done the healing work and are genuinely in better place than you were when the relationship ended. The real happiness and growth radiates in ways that performed happiness never could. Genuine high value means you have actually built worth through developing yourself, rather than just trying to project worth. You have invested in your goals, relationships, health, and personal growth. You have become someone who truly has options and who truly knows their worth. This authentic value is what makes you attractive rather than any performance of value. The boundaries must be real boundaries that protect your well-being, rather than strategic walls designed to make the avoidant pursue. You are not available for breadcrumbs or inconsistency, because you genuinely value yourself too much to accept that treatment, not because you are playing hard to get. The authenticity of the boundaries is what makes them effective. Living this approach, rather than performing it, also serves you regardless of whether the avoidant comes back. If they do come back, you are in strong position to require genuine change and create healthier dynamic. If they do not come back, you have still built better life and become stronger person. You win either way because you have invested in yourself rather than investing in strategy to get them back. The approach requires real healing work, real investment in yourself, real building of your life, independent of the avoidant. This work takes time and genuine effort. It cannot be faked or rushed, but this work is what creates the transformation that makes you magnetic to the avoidant in ways you were not before. And it is what ensures that whether they come back or not, you have created better life for yourself. The approach is not magic trick or manipulation tactic. It is becoming your best self, honoring your worth, and moving forward with your life in ways that happen to trigger the avoidance fear of loss and desire for what they cannot easily have. The fact that it often brings avoidance back is byproduct of your growth rather than the goal. The goal is your own healing and thriving. The avoidant potentially crawling back is just additional benefit of choosing yourself and living well. The timeline of how this approach typically unfolds. Understanding the typical timeline of how this approach brings the avoidant back helps you navigate the process without panicking or abandoning the strategy too early. The timeline varies by situation, but certain patterns emerge consistently when the approach is implemented genuinely and sustained over time. In the first few weeks after you implement the approach, the avoidant typically experiences relief. They interpret your acceptance of their decision as confirmation they were right to leave. They feel free from the pressure of the relationship. They may seem completely unaffected by your absence. This initial relief is exactly what you want, because it gives you space to do your own healing work without the complication of the avoidant breadcrumbing or trying to maintain contact. Around weeks 3 through 8, the avoidance relief begins to fade and other feelings start to emerge. They notice your absence more acutely. They see your social media posts showing you thriving, and it creates first stirrings of questioning whether they made the right decision. They may start checking on you more frequently through social media or mutual friends. The seeds of doubt about their decision are planted. Between 2 and 4 months, the avoidant often experiences significant shift in their feelings about the loss. They have had enough time to realize that being without you is not as wonderful as they anticipated. They see that you are genuinely moving forward rather than waiting for them. They begin to miss you in ways they could not miss you when you were pursuing them. This is typically when the first reaching out attempts begin. The reaching out usually starts indirectly and small. The avoidant likes old photos on social media. They comment on something neutral. They reach out about practical matter. They are testing whether you are still available and whether you have truly moved on. Your response to these initial tests is critical. If you respond with enthusiasm or make yourself too available, the approach fails because they learn you were not truly moving on. If you respond politely but maintain your boundaries, their interest intensifies. Between 4 and 8 months, if you have maintained the approach consistently, the avoidant typically experiences crescendo of wanting you back. They have watched you thrive for extended period. They have tested your boundaries and found them real. They recognize they may lose you permanently if they do not act. This is when more direct expressions of wanting to reconnect typically occur. They express regret, ask to meet, or directly state they want another chance. The timeline can be shorter or longer, depending on the specific avoidant and circumstances. Some avoidants respond within weeks, others take over a year. Some never respond at all, because they are too defended or have genuinely moved on to other things. But the pattern of relief, fading into questioning, fading into desire to reconnect, is consistent among avoidants who do come back in response to this approach. Understanding this timeline helps you avoid the mistake of reaching out too soon when you see no response. The avoidance silence in the early weeks and months does not mean the approach is not working. It means they are in the relief phase and have not yet processed what they lost. Maintaining the approach through the initial silence is essential to creating the conditions for their eventual shift in perception. Common mistakes that undermine this approach. Many people attempt this approach but make critical mistakes that undermine its effectiveness. Understanding these common mistakes helps you avoid them and increases the likelihood that the approach will work to bring the avoidant back if they are capable of coming back. The first mistake is performing the approach rather than living it authentically. People post curated social media content designed to make the avoidant jealous while actually being miserable. They pretend to have moved on while secretly obsessing about the avoidant. They fake acceptance while desperately hoping the avoidant will come back. This inauthenticity is detectable and makes the approach fail because the avoidant senses the manipulation. The second mistake is breaking the boundaries when the avoidant makes initial contact. The avoidant reaches out with casual message, and the person immediately falls back into long emotional conversation or makes themselves completely available. This proves the thriving and boundaries were not real, and removes all the urgency and intrigue that was building. The avoidant learns they still have easy access and loses motivation to pursue seriously. The third mistake is not actually doing the work to thrive and just waiting for the avoidant to notice they are not pursuing. Simply going silent without genuinely building better life is not enough. The avoidant needs to see actual transformation and growth, not just absence of pursuit. If you are silently waiting and not actually thriving, the approach will not create the necessary shift in how they perceive you. The fourth mistake is giving up too early when the avoidant does not respond immediately. People implement the approach for few weeks, see no response, and either reach out to the avoidant or abandon the strategy. But the timeline for this approach is months, not weeks. The avoidant needs time to process the loss and see your sustained thriving before their perception shifts enough to motivate them to reach out. The fifth mistake is implementing the approach with specific timeline or deadline. People decide they will do this for 3 months, and if the avoidant has not come back by then, they will reach out or move on. But having deadline creates attachment to outcome that undermines the genuine acceptance and forward movement. The approach works when you are actually living your best life, indefinitely, regardless of whether the avoidant returns, not when you are counting down until deadline. The sixth mistake is focusing more on the avoidant potentially seeing you're thriving than on actually thriving for yourself. People make decisions about what to post or where to go based on whether the avoidant might see it, rather than based on what genuinely serves their healing and growth. This other-focused orientation prevents authentic thriving and makes the approach manipulative rather than genuine. The seventh mistake is accepting the avoidant back too easily when they do reach out without requiring evidence of genuine change. The approach brought them back, but they have not done the deep work to change their patterns. Taking them back without requiring concrete proof of transformation means repeating the same painful cycle. The approach should bring them back, but you should still require significant evidence of change before fully reconciling. Avoiding these mistakes requires commitment to your own healing and growth, as the primary goal with the avoidant potentially coming back being secondary benefit rather than the main objective. When your focus is genuinely on yourself and your life, the approach works because it is authentic. When your focus remains on the avoidant and getting them back, the approach fails because the inauthenticity undermines it. What to do when the avoidant does crawl back? When the avoidant does come back in response to this approach, how you handle their return determines whether reconciliation has any chance of being different than the previous relationship, or whether you simply repeat the same painful patterns. The fact that they came back does not mean they have changed or that the relationship will work this time. Your response to their return is critical. First, do not immediately accept them back or make yourself fully available. The fact that they reached out does not mean they have earned access to you again. Maintain your boundaries and require them to demonstrate genuine effort over time, rather than accepting their return based on words and initial interest. They need to prove through consistent action that they have changed, not just express regret about how things ended. Second, require concrete evidence that they have done therapeutic work on their attachment patterns. Ask specifically what they have learned about themselves, what wounds they are healing, what they are doing differently. If they have not been in therapy or cannot articulate their growth work, they have not done the deep work necessary for different outcome. Do not accept vague claims of having changed without concrete evidence. Third, move slowly and observe whether changed behavior is sustained. The avoidant may show up differently in the initial stages of reconnection because they are motivated to get you back. But this changed behavior must be sustained over months before you can trust it is genuine transformation rather than temporary effort. Watch for signs of old patterns re-emerging as the relationship develops. Fourth, establish clear boundaries about what you need and what you will not tolerate. You are not the same person who accepted breadcrumbs and accommodated their patterns before. You have grown and you require genuine emotional availability, consistent communication, and real commitment. Make these requirements clear and enforce consequences if they are not met. Fifth, assess whether their return is motivated by genuine desire to be with you or by other factors like loneliness, ego, or fear of you moving on. Ask yourself whether they are showing up because they genuinely want to invest in relationship with you, or because they want to restore their access to you without fundamentally changing. Their motivation matters because it predicts whether they can sustain the effort required for healthy relationship. Sixth, be willing to walk away again if they revert to old patterns. The fact that the approach worked to bring them back does not obligate you to stay if they cannot maintain changed behavior. You have proven you can thrive without them. You must remain willing to choose yourself again if they prove they have not truly changed. This willingness is what maintains your power and protects your well-being. The avoidant crawling back is not the goal or the victory. The goal is your own healing and thriving. If the avoidant comes back genuinely changed and capable of healthy relationship, that is bonus. If they come back unchanged, or if they never come back at all, you have still won because you built better life for yourself. The approach works regardless of the outcome with the avoidant because it serves you first and foremost. The power is in your growth, not in their return. The most liberating truth about this approach is that your power comes from the growth you achieve and the life you build, not from whether the avoidant ultimately comes back. When you implement this approach genuinely, you transform into stronger, more independent, more self-aware person, regardless of the avoidance response. This transformation is the real victory. The approach works because it aligns your actions with your well-being regardless of the avoidance choices. You are not sacrificing yourself or waiting indefinitely for someone who may never be capable of meeting your needs. You are actively building better life while remaining open to possibility of reconciliation if the avoidant demonstrates genuine transformation. This alignment with your own best interests is what creates the authentic power that makes you magnetic to the avoidant while simultaneously ensuring your well-being, whether they return or not.